How's it going, everybody? In this video we will be replacing the control arms on this 2015 Kia Optima. Alright, so now that we have the tire off, we get a better view at what we're working with. The control arm is held in place by 3 bolts. The first in the back here, the second in the front up here, and the last connected to the hub with a cotter pin. What I recommend is loosening everything and not removing entirely until the end. This will help just to make sure that everything stays in place and doesn't pop out or anything like that. So the first I'll start with is this back one. It is a 19 millimeter, and I'll start by loosening the bottom. However, the top nut might start spinning, in which place I'll grab a ratcheting wrench and hold it in place. Next, for the bolt in towards the front of the vehicle, it's a 17 millimeter. It's just a bolt with a nut welded on the inside of the frame. So what I'm going to use is this 3/8 inch ratchet and a 17 millimeter socket just to break it free. And once things start to loosen up, I'll be able to fit a 17 millimeter ratcheting wrench in there to finish it off. And I'll use a cheater bar to help break it free. There we go. All right, so now that it's broke loose, I can use a 17 millimeter ratcheting wrench and continue to loosen it. All right, now we can remove the cotter pin right in the front here. Now that the cotter pin has been removed, we can remove the nut with a 19 millimeter socket. All right, now that the nut has been removed, we have access to the bolt, and I was able to take this hammer and smack the end of it to get it to this point. Just to protect your ears, I'll mute it, that way you don't have to hear the loud banging. Okay, so now we can remove the back 2 bolts completely, and that'll give us some more access to actually be able to move the control arm itself, to remove this bolt and to pry off the ball joint. Okay, now to separate the ball joint from the hub, I have this fork which I can get in here and pry this apart. If you don't have anything like this, maybe a big crowbar or a couple screwdrivers, something to build a wedge, even like a chisel to separate this will really help. Here we go. All right, now that we have the old unit out, what I like to do is grease up the new unit, especially the ball joint here, these rubber grommets, as well as the insides of the frame that it's going to be sitting in, and where the ball joint fits as well. It just helps out getting things maneuvered. One more step I take is I like to put this Loctite anti-seize on all the bolts and start threading them just to make sure that the threads are still good on everything. That way when we put everything back together, it'll go in extremely smooth. And if it has to come back off for any reason in the future, it'll be a lot easier to take off. So I just like putting some on the threads, screwing the nuts in place, making sure that everything is good before I install. All right, for the reinstall, I like to put the backside in first before lining up the ball joint. I'll slide these in place and then put their bolts in place, just tighten them a little bit before I go ahead and try to line up the front here of the ball joint on the wheel hub. Go. All right, now that both of the back sides are in place, still a little bit loose just for mobility, we can realign the ball joint here on the bottom of the wheel hub. You might be fighting with the rest of the suspension parts, but if you push down on the control arm, you should be able to even push the ball joint back or forward manually, just to get a better angle to line it up. And once we have it lined up, we can smack the bottom with a hammer and that'll actually push it back up into the hub. All right, once we get the ball joint lined up with the hole of the hub, we can take a hammer, smack the bottom, knock it up in place. And then put the bolt back in place. And we can go ahead and tighten this guy all the way up and then move back to the other two. And we can put the cotter pin back in place. And we can completely tighten the one in the back here. And then we can finish tightening the one in the front. Alright, now that we have one side done, we can move to the other and do the same thing. I hope you found this video helpful and informative, and if you could, please leave a like and subscribe.